Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Goromaya, thank you, Lewis, from the Ronalds Way Met Office. There's a strong wind warning in the North Irish Sea for the next 24 hours. Dry with variable cloud on the island, bright or sunny intervals, and a fresh west-southwesterly. Top temperature is 13 degrees today. It's going to be dry overnight, and we're down to 10 Celsius at the moment. The matrix lines are showing fog on the mountain at Hilbury, Bargarrow, Ramsey and Sulby, so there is fog on the mountain road. For Saturday, tomorrow, Jasana, a dry start with sunny periods. Then lowering cloud will bring some rain on a fresh west-southwesterly wind, veering northwesterly as the rain clears tomorrow afternoon. Daytime maximum 12 and dry through the night into Sunday, lowest 7 degrees. Jaduni, dry and sunny with a fresh north-northeasterly and up to 9 degrees. High water was about 40 minutes ago. Sunset is at 14 minutes past 4 this afternoon. Low water 20 to 6. High water 27 minutes past 11. Low water tomorrow morning 12 minutes to 6. The sunrise is at 5 to 8.
If you're looking for supply-only windows and doors, make sure you visit the Manx Glass and Glazing showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate or call 674 573.
New TV or white goods? Choose Waltons with Black Friday prices that won't be beaten on Ireland. For the latest leading brands of TVs and the latest leading brands of white goods, it has to be Waltons. Call in today and take it away.
Carpetland, the carpet specialist with the island's best value carpets in stock and fitted within a week. Furnitureland for three-piece suites, dining and living room furniture, and a selection of amazing beds. Carpetland and Furnitureland, West Street, Ramsey.
Your dog will love the excellent doggy daycare at Coach House Kennels in Cattery, with plenty of outdoor space and experienced staff. All breeds and ages are welcome. For the best value in doggy daycare, call 812-990.
MO's large showroom at Unit 2, Jerby Industrial Estate, with loads of choice all under one roof. Husqvarna auto mowers, battery and petrol chainsaws, hedge trimmers, trimmers, mowers, and all your gardening needs. Call Air Mowers on 898 589.
The Mannin Line with Andy Winch.
7 minutes past 12. Fast am I. Good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line live with David Ashford. Your brand new Treasury Minister will be here on the line for you. First of all, there were 2 COVID-related deaths announced yesterday. 44 new cases were recorded. 379 active cases. 32 people, 3 people were in hospital. Nobody is in ICU at the moment. 272 people waiting for the result of a test and 58 people booked in for a test today. From the vaccination dashboard, the news is that so far we have 68,179 people having had first dose, 64,747 second dose, 14,005 booster dose and 395 third dose. The total number of vaccinations, 147,326, 13,662 shots of vaccine currently in stock for the Department of Health and Social Care. And David Ashford, welcome back. Brand new job. Good to see you. Thanks for being with us today.
Good to be here, Andy.
It's going to be surreal for me because you were in so much last year as Department of Health and Social Care as the Minister. Do you ever get confused now?
I must say it is surreal for me as well. I mean, I spent 4 years at the Department of Health and was quite in depth into it. I think I was telling you a story before where I was sat in the House of Keys the other week and a question came up for the Minister for Health and Social Care, and you have one of those mind lapses where I suddenly thought, I haven't seen the answer to that, and then I suddenly realised it's not me answering it. So yeah, it'll take a bit of getting used to, but I'm delighted with the new challenges I've got ahead in Treasury.
I was going to say, were you happy to take the job?
I'm more than happy to take the job. I was delighted when the Chief Minister offered me. It's a huge challenge, Treasury. We've got massive amounts of challenges over the next 5 years in terms of government revenue and ensuring that our services can operate as we need them to, and I'm delighted to take that role on.
Okay, let's go to our first call, and I think we've got Charlie on Mannin line. Charlie, good afternoon. You're live with David Ashford.
Good morning or afternoon. Hello, David.
Hi, Charlie.
You know, I talked to you when I come round looking for your vote about the lane across the road in Williston Crescent.
Oh, sorry, Charlie, I didn't quite catch that.
I'm on about the lane in Williston Crescent that goes...
Oh, yes, yes.
The one that's being closed down by the Douglas Corporation.
Yes, I actually have a progress update on that, so I need to get in touch with you about that. I had a response from DOI yesterday, actually, in relation to it, and they're going to be speaking to the council about the issue. So rather than put it out now over the radio, I'll contact you later today, and we'll have a chat about it. But hopefully the issue's now resolved, or will be resolved.
Okay.
I'd just like to point out... Can I just say another word, please?
Yeah, of course you can.
Well, my point about it really is, David, you know where you live up in Harewood Avenue, up that way?
Yes.
When you drive through there, you've got all these little sneaky little lanes. You get to places, shortcuts instead of going round the house and round the estates. Well, this is how important this little lane is across the road for all the people up in Williston. You know that yourself.
It is. It's been well used since the 1950s. It's always been there. As I think we discussed, I've used it myself to cut through.
Okay, all right, Charlie, thanks for that. Well, David Ashford, just give us a brief outline of that. What was the situation?
So basically, there's a lane that used to run from Johnny Watson's Lane the whole way through to Williston Crescent, and Douglas Council has basically blocked it off and tried to incorporate it into one of the Williston Crescent properties. So I've been speaking to DOI and planning about that, and I've had a response from them yesterday, which I'll get back to Charlie with.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks for bringing that up as well. Now, Treasury has to deliver services. You've gone from a department that spent all the money to a department now that has to provide all the money, and you often have to say no to people now. Just let me get this right. Six areas in Treasury, is that right? There's income tax, customs and excise, social security, financial governance, and financial advisory and audit advisory, is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. And your team is who at the moment?
In terms of political members, within the Treasury Board is made up of Bill Henderson, who I was delighted agreed to continue within Treasury to bring some much-needed experience in there on the board. Sarah Maltby and also Andrew Smith as well, who are two new members to Keys, who I think will do an excellent job.
Okay, you've obviously appraised yourself of the situation. How is the Isle of Man financially?
Financially, we're a lot better off than many other areas of the world. We've just been through a worldwide pandemic, and it's still obviously ongoing as well. The total cost of COVID was around about £68 million, but we've actually held up pretty well. Our investments have managed to do quite a good return during that period, so we're not having to chase money in the way other countries are, and we haven't had to get a huge amount of national debt piled on as a result of COVID. So actually, we're in a lot better place than we could be. We've got huge challenges over the next 5 years. There's a funding gap in health potentially over that period of about 40 million. We've also got climate change to fund, which could be up to, if not more than 100 million over the next 5 years that we need to find. So it's not to say there's no challenges, but we are in a lot better place than a lot of small nations around the world.
Just going to climate change as well. Is that an open checkbook for climate change? Because nobody knows when the campaign will stop. We won't know when it's been a success. So, where does Treasury fit in that? Is Treasury part of policy, or do people just hand Treasury initiatives?
Well, Treasury has to be part of the conversations. Treasury, and this is where people sometimes get confused, Treasury isn't there to decide policy. It's for the departments to decide what their policy is, and government as a whole, and then to put that policy to Timwood. Treasury is there to ensure that any money that is allocated and spent is done so appropriately and in line with financial regulations. So it's not appropriate for Treasury to be interfering with the department's policy. Treasury is there just to make sure that it is appropriately financed, and that any finance they're requesting for is appropriate, and of course making sure that we have a limited pot of money, that it is spread and targeted in the right areas.
Okay, David, you're live with David Ashford.
Hi David, it's David Quirk here. What I want to ask you, David, is regarding the TT. Is it on your priority list to get things moving? because people are now inquiring about the TT, wanting to book accommodation. The department's putting out the thing for homestay. And we were shocked about the business case. And I'll throw the second one in. I'll leave you to answer them then. The other thing is, what is going to be one of your priorities to make sure that we seek value for money for the contracts that other ministers are actually putting forward? Good examples of that is the promenade, the variations to contract. I'd love for you to tell me, or back to Andy sometime next week, how many variations to contract we could see. And then the other thing regarding the flume, so it doesn't happen again.
Right, well, these all tie in, and very good questions, David. In relation to TT, it most certainly has to be a priority. We need to now be gearing up, ready for TT 2022. I think we've got a huge opportunity there with the TT going forward to do a relaunch, basically, to say we're back, bigger and better than ever. And Treasury will be engaging with the Department for Enterprise, with which the responsibility for organising TT falls to actually see what we can do to move it forward, and also see what we can do to make things different and ensure that we can actually have a bigger and better TT than we had before for people to come to next year. So we do need to start gearing up. You're quite right, because a lot of the bookings normally would be actually in by now. So we need to be giving that certainty to the tourism industry as well. In terms of contracts, I've always been in favour, and I campaigned on it in the election, and we will be moving forward with it as a government, as the Capital Projects Unit that was committed to in the last administration, to forming a centralised capital projects unit. I think sometimes it's been unfair on some of the departments who haven't necessarily got that sort of expertise on the big projects within the department, that they've had to take them, run them, as well as doing the day job. So what we need is a central government capital projects unit that will do projects, say, over the amount of £5 million, and ensure that those contracts are absolutely watertight. They are the right contracts in place to deliver the project required.
Yes. Well, that's great. The other thing, too, David, just quickly, Andy, is that lane that's in Williston. I've walked that donkey's years when I was a young fellow in Williston. You can't close a public footpath without advertising it and the public having a say. Bye.
Yeah, no, I'm fully aware of that. And like I say, I've been in touch with DOI and also planning, and I do have an answer for Charlie on that, which is a constituency matter. I will get back to him this afternoon.
OK, thanks, David.
That's good. See you, bye.
All right, it's 17 minutes past 12. Where does the Auditor General fit into all this?
So the Auditor General is there to ensure that value for money has been achieved. So the Auditor General will actually play going forward quite an intricate part in ensuring that things are
Treasury?
audited. The Auditor General is an independent,
right.
So it's not actually part of a government department. It's an actual independent oversight. The nearest equivalent I can give is the audit version of the Tynwald Ombudsman.
OK, you were talking about getting value for money for contracts and making sure contracts were watertight. Does that ever involve penalty clauses? It
can do, and there are, so despite sometimes the myths that go out, there are contracts that government does already that have penalty clauses in, and we have seen examples before of where there's been defects, for instance, on certain roads, where it's been at the cost of the contractor to go back and fix it. It's not always DOI that picks up the bill for repairs, so there is already a situation where there's penalty clauses in for things such as defects, and also where there's time delays.
A note in from Dennis, who just said, and it was this point about penalty clauses, and just said, I'm sure that there are times when government departments do things on time and on budget. So it might be an idea for government, for some positive news, to actually tell the public when things have been done on time and perhaps under budget.
Well, in fact, I mean, a prime example of that during the pandemic, going back to my previous hat, was the 111 line, where we created a 111 line in the space, I think, of around about 3 months from scratch. And there's other numerous examples I can think of, works that have gone on for DOI up in my constituency that have been done earlier than planned. I think the problem is, of course, the big headlines will always be when you have something go wrong, but there's lots of things that do go right across government and are delivered on time and on budget, and that's often, and under budget.
And that often leads to, obviously, if headlines are picked up about things going wrong, and you're quite right, that always makes news, it can often lead to people in government being dispirited. by getting sniped at for things that have gone wrong. And I suppose the public, you talked about transparency and being open with people. If people knew more about things, if things do go right and come in under budget, that's fine.
Well, I mean, people can see from the Pink Book and also from the government accounts project, but obviously not everyone's going to go online and trawl through government accounts. So, I mean, one of the things I want to look at in Treasury is the way we communicate with the public, and the way that we publish figures out to the public, and we make it in much more bite-sized and easily digestible format. Because while people like me do go through the Pink Book and through the Dark Blue Book in detail, we can't expect that an ordinary members of the public are going to do that.
Okay, Letty dropped a note in and just said that story on Manx Radio yesterday about us paying more for defence and international relations than the Channel Islands. Is it true?
Right, so in relation to the costs, that is correct, but our relationship with the UK has been very different with the Channel Islands over the years. To cut a long story short, because you can actually go back to 1866 in relation to the way this is built up, is we actually have a set agreement with the UK. Now, my understanding is Jersey and Guernsey don't have set agreements. So within our agreement, which was agreed with the UK in 1994, it replaced what was basically a rolling annual vote. So each year, the contribution under the Contributions Act of 1956, I think it was, had to actually come to Tynwald for a vote. That was changed in 1994, and it's now a set amount with the GDP and deflator that is built into the UK budget each year being the measure of the increase each year. But for that money, and it's never meant to be an exact payment because you can't work out and divide off how much it costs the UK in terms of providing potential defence or consular services, but it ensures that if we have people abroad who get into issues, as we did during COVID where people were getting stuck in countries abroad, they can use the UK embassy for access. But our agreement is actually in writing, so the terms of our agreement, which were laid out in February 1994, which was signed by the then Home Secretary Michael Howard and the then Chief Minister Donald Gelling, actually lay out precisely what will be provided. I believe Jersey and Guernsey don't actually have that. It's a gentleman's agreement, I would say. I believe there's no written agreement.
Okay, with David Ashford, Treasury Minister at the moment. You want to get in touch, text 166 177. Got lots of emails and text to get to studio@manxradio.com is the email address. Or call 66 13 68 is G now. We're going back to the green policies and squaring the agreement with Manx Utilities as well regarding the power station, the debt, the bond, and any sort of green policies. Again, where's the money coming from?
So again, people will be aware of the that we refinanced the debt for the MUA, and one of the reasons we were doing the refinancing was to ensure that they're not laden down and having to continuously pay interest, which was causing problems for them switching over. We do need to look at the way that the MUA generates power. At the moment, only about 7% of the power generated, and again, I raised this during the election in Douglas North, only 7% comes from renewables. We've got the gas turbines that I think go out of date in 2031, so we actually will need to look at what we replace those with. I think one of the big opportunities we've got as an island over the next 5 years is in relation to renewable energy. Wind and tidal are moving on massively from where they were, and being an island in the Irish Sea, we should be taking advantage of that.
A note in from this is Cherie, actually, and just said, should we ignore potential gas revenues?
Well, I think we need to consider that very, very carefully. I mean, there's countries that have very successfully, Norway's one, but there's a big debate going on in Norway now that has actually used the revenue from the oil they produce to actually go green. So they've actually reinvested that into green initiatives. So I don't think at this point, and I was one of the candidates that was very clear because we were lobbied on this. We always sent surveys by various organisations. I was quite clear and honest in saying I don't believe we should rule it out. We should very, very carefully analyse it and actually look at the pros and cons, but we shouldn't rule it out, was my point of view at the election. But like I say, that does need to be looked at very, very carefully. But there are examples around the world where countries such as Norway have actually used the money generated from the fossil fuels to actually reinvest into their green technology, and it's moved them on leaps and bounds compared to other countries.
David Ashford, Treasury Minister, with us today, 24 minutes past 12. Andrew's with us now. Andrew, you're live with David Ashford.
Hi, good day to you, David.
Hi, Andrew.
Please, a couple of questions. I did have one, but just following on from climate change, etc. I'm wondering, would there be, please, any cost to government of banning the use of black coal and banning fossil fuel companies advertising and sponsorship? That's the first question. And the second question, when do you expect, please, somebody to bring forward a motion for pay rises for MHKs, and what's the response going to be? Thanks.
Right, well, in terms of pay rises for MHKs, the pay rises for MHKs don't come forward as a motion as such. There's a very set mechanism in place, so it's tied to a grade in the civil service that when the actual civil service pay agreement is reached each year, it applies, that grades rise applies to MHKs. So we moved away, I think it was probably about good 15 years ago now, from the days where the House used to, and the court used to effectively vote on their own pay. That was not an appropriate mechanism. So it's now tied to a grade in the civil service, and depending upon what pay rise is awarded across the civil service each year, MHKs are tied into that. So it's not done so much as a motion anymore. In terms of banning fossil fuel advertising for companies, that would of course apply to companies like Manx Gas and so on. I'm not sure at the moment that really would achieve anything as such, because we are going to have some gas dependency for quite a good number of years to come.
Manx Petroleum.
We have to, and Manx Petroleums as well, of course, it would apply to. So again, I think that's something to consider in the future, maybe, as the green agenda moves on, but I don't think it's something right here for the right here and now. In terms to the cost to government of banning black coal, the use of black coal on the island, as far as I'm aware, has declined quite dramatically, and I think it will decline naturally. I've got to be honest, as a politician, I'm always quite reluctant to go out banning things. I think there's other ways of doing things rather than having to go down the legislative route of banning, and I think our use of black coal will naturally subside, as will our use of fossil fuels as the world moves on.
When you were pounding the doorsteps around North Douglas, did you smell any coal being burnt around the estate?
There was a few. There's a few that still actually do have the old-fashioned fires around a couple of the estates, but then a lot of the build in Douglas North is there's quite a bit that's new compared to some of the historic areas of Douglas anyway. But there's a few, but it is very few in number.
Okay, all right. Anything else, Andrew?
Well, I'd just like to say, please, if I may, cigarette and tobacco advertising was banned, and it would be a similar procedure or analogy, I think, to ban the use of fossil fuel and sponsorship.
I think the one difference I would say there is between those two is with tobacco and alcohol, it's an optional choice. You can survive without alcohol, you can survive without cigarettes, but to be frank, at the moment and for a good while yet, we are still going to be dependent on gas, we are going to be dependent on fuel-driven cars, but as that moves on, changes over the next 10 to 15 years, then obviously the metric changes as well. So I think, like I say, it's something that may be considered in the future, but I think at the moment we're not quite at that point yet.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Niall.
Okay, and Stephen is with us. Hi, Steve.
Hi, good morning. Hi, David.
Hi, Steve.
Just one question. Regarding the airport tax, I believe you've said that you're not going to do a reduction. Surely this is a bit of a slap in the face for hoteliers. You know, the tourist industry has really suffered. And what will happen if they're trying to grow TT and we lose any of the hotels, we're in catch-22, we won't have the bed spaces.
So this is in terms of the air passenger duty. Now, in terms of air passenger duty, this is a change that the Chancellor announced will come into his budget in April 2023. We haven't said we won't do it. What we've actually said is we will need to consider it carefully because it is a reduction of roughly around about 2 million in revenue, which would then have to be met elsewhere. And there's no guarantee that it will actually be passed on to the ticket price because it would only be one way. The UK agreement has made absolutely clear that it's only internally within the Chancellor made clear in his budget, it's only internally within the UK, so it's England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. It will not include the Crown dependencies. So the overall reduction would be roughly, I think it's £6.30 or £6.50, that would be the reduction on a one-way fare. So basically, I've got to be honest, and I was brutally honest in Keys, if I had to be a betting man, I'm not sure that would be passed on to the consumer. I'm not sure it would actually decrease it.
You think the airlines will
I think, airlines have been through an absolutely torrid time during COVID. Some airlines haven't survived, some have only just survived. And, I'm dubious as to whether that sort of level of low reduction would actually be passed on to the consumer. As always, I'd be pleasantly surprised to be proved wrong, but I'm not convinced at the moment. But it doesn't come in the UK either until April 2023, so it gives us time to consider.
Okay, yeah. But also on that, I mean, the airlines have had a difficult time, but so have the hotels, and the hospitality industry on the island. They need a real kick in the sort of arm to get some support or what have you. I mean, I may have missed it before, but has there been an official statement saying that TT is going ahead next year yet?
So there hasn't been the formal statement yet, but all our plans at the moment is that TT22 will go ahead. There's been nothing to the contrary discussed. Obviously, in terms of the hotels, one of the things we've had in place over the pandemic period is the strategic capacity scheme. Certainly the hoteliers I've spoken to have found that exceptionally helpful to try and help them survive. And what we need to do going forward is look to market the island. You're absolutely right, market the island. And, TT 2022 is a prime example of that, where I think we can actually say we're back and we're back bigger and better.
And I think also on the back of that, David, if I may suggest, is the steam packet need to look at their fares again. Some of the prices being quoted last year were expensive.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there's been issues around capacity and, the amount of people travelling, which has driven up prices for all sorts of carriers over the pandemic period. But yeah, we need to make sure that across the whole piece that we are an attractive island to come to. We've got a beautiful island here, and we should be sharing it with the world.
Correct.
Okay.
Very much so.
All right.
Thanks,
Steve.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right, let's get to talk to you 29 minutes before 1. Loads of texts and emails. Here we go with Heather. Can you ask Mr. Ashford, is there any money in the current budget for the Castle Rushen High School? The new playing fields have been under construction for a long time, but we need a new building, especially with all the houses being built in Ballasalla and Castletown.
So there is capital money already committed to Castle Rushen and the build for Castle Rushen, and has been in previous budgets. We've also we'll be talking through with the Department of Education in coming weeks around all the capital schemes. I've got all the departments coming in ahead of the budget over the next few weeks to discuss their cases, and I think I've got a meeting arranged later this month to discuss with the Minister for Education about Castle Rushen specifically.
Okay, 28 minutes before 1. Mannin Line live with the Treasury Minister.
Businesses, here's some very, very good news for your phone bills. Because the largest telecoms reseller in the UK is now on island. Switch to Berry Telecom and they'll upgrade your phone system with the latest tech to keep you, your staff and your customers better connected. You'll also make some very big savings on your land and mobile calls, especially if you rack up a lot of roaming charges. Berry Telecom. Very good news for your business.
Coming up on your left is TD Car Centre. TD Car Centre, for a great selection of top-of-the-range used cars available, all sourced and looked after by exceptional island mechanics. You have driven past TD Car Centre. Make a U-turn where possible and proceed to Hills Meadow. I said, make a U-turn where possible. You're due an upgrade.
TD Car Centre. tdcar.im.
I
Jane, we must get that lunch we keep talking about. How about tomorrow?
Great idea. Oh, I know this great place, Port St Mary Golf Pavilion. I was there for a birthday party the other day. The food is fantastic.
Oh, yeah, I was there on Sunday for the carvery. They've done it up really nicely. Did you try the homemade cakes?
Wow. Yes, I did. They're definitely worth the calories. Talking of calories, I'm off to the gym. I'll do extra to make up for that cake we're going to have.
For menus and opening hours, visit psmpavilion.im.
That ready for Christmas feeling. It's when you know those special bottles for the main event have been carefully selected and stored. Buy now at ShopRite and WineRite and you'll save a packet into the bargain. Like selected Sainsbury's Taste the Difference wines with a 25% discount and 3 bottles for £18 on a great range of wines. Buy now and be sure you have it at ShopRite and WineRite. Proudly locally owned.
2 seats are waiting in Ledgco, but for whom? 7 names are in the hat, but who do you think should fill those seats? This Sunday from 12 to 1, I'll be questioning those 7 hopefuls on why they think it should be them. You judge who you think makes the best case for inclusion. This Sunday, on air, on smartphone app, or online at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
25 to 1. Jed, you're live with David Ashford, Treasury Minister.
Hi, good afternoon, David.
Good afternoon, Jed.
Hi, could you share with us, the listeners, how you think your position in the Treasury will be to stimulate job growth, prosperity, and improvements in the economy? Have you got any sort of great ideas that you can introduce, say, in the next 5 years?
Yep, so in terms of job growth, that's absolutely crucial. One of the problems that a lot of sectors are experiencing at the moment is shortages of staff. So this all ties, it's not just Treasury, this actually ties across government. And this again goes back to something I was saying in the election campaign. We need to make sure our social policies is right. So that's having affordable housing for people to access. Because if we're going to actually create job growth, we need people to fill those vacancies. So that means you need to attract young people and young families into the island. And you can't do that unless you have affordable housing that they can actually achieve and purchase. And also actually go out and actually market the island. I think it's all interlinked, so it's not just one or two things; it's everything together. I think one of the things we need to look at as well is I think we need to actually look at where the new sectors are coming from around the world and be advertising the Isle of Man as a great place to do business for those sectors. There's particularly things around the growing green technology space that again I emphasised during my election campaign up in Douglas North, that I think the Isle of Man could become a real green energy hub, and we need to be targeting those markets now. But like I say, I think it all ties together. So it's not one simple answer. It's across the whole piece to government policy.
You're saying, more people to fill jobs, more immigration.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, we have a people shortage at the moment in some sectors, and what we need to be doing is we actually need to be trying to fill that. I mean, our unemployment rate at the moment is 0.8%. So we've got 1,175 job vacancies, and we've got 326 registered unemployed, and 134 of those, so about 41%, have actually been unemployed for less than 3 months. So it is getting now to the point where some sectors, particularly in hospitality, are struggling, and we need to be encouraging people to come to the island to fill those vacancies.
Jed, what's your view?
Well, David, you identified the housing crisis that is upon us. This surely demands immediate action. We can talk about changing policy and so forth, but we need to take action in the next few sittings, in government. So how do you suggest we get around that?
Well, I think, to be honest, I've got to be blunt, that I don't think the next few sittings are going to be able to be a proper formulated housing policy brought forward. But one of the key things that this administration has done, and the Chief Minister has been very keen to drive forward, is creating a focus on that housing issue. That's why Chris Thomas has been delegated with the new housing board as will be created. And it shows that this government is actually committed to trying to resolve that issue. I've got to be honest, I don't think there is a quick fix to it.
But you must know that some of those immigrants, some of those families who want to come to the Isle of Man will do the numbers, look at house prices, and the numbers won't stack up.
They will, and that's exactly why we need to look across the piece, because whenever we talk about housing as well, and I think it was during the debate which you very ably chaired in Douglas North, Andy, where I raised this very point, when we talk about houses, we always refer to first-time buyers. It's not just about first-time buyers. It's also about actually ensuring that there's appropriate social housing and that there's other forms of housing. And I've got to be honest, I don't think it is a quick fix. You can't change the market overnight. Other jurisdictions have found that, but what we've got to do, and we've got to start early, is getting this housing board created, set up, and start moving that policy forward.
Okay, Jed, I mean, can you think of a way of breaking the logjam around housing?
I think it's control of the rentals, multiple, property owning landlords, the stranglehold that they've got on the population, really. I think there could be immediate action taken there. And it's the public demands it, because we've got quite a drain of young people leaving the island. We've got a lacklustre nightlife and entertainment for them. It is at a crisis point at the moment, and I hope that David and his team can move swiftly.
Okay.
And I mean, one of the things you've hit on there, Jed, if I just say at the end there, it's a bit like chicken and egg, really, because one of the reasons you've got issues is there is a staffing shortage in the hospitality sector, and of course we're not going to be able to create that vibrant nighttime economy without the people to actually do the jobs. So we've got to encourage people in order to do that. But we do need to drive things forward. The landlords, in terms of that, there's landlord registration scheme that the DOI has been working on. I know there's been a bit of controversy over that, particularly with the landlords, but we will continue to work with the landlord sector. What you tend to find is that if you go too far the other way and you start trying to regulate prices rather than letting the market do it in the rental sector, other jurisdictions have seen a case where you just see a mass exit of landlords, and if that happens, the prices can actually go up rather than down.
Okay, all right, thanks for that, Jed. Actually, nightlife is a whole other show about how to rejuvenate nightlife around the Isle of Man. Here's David with us. You're live with David Ashford. David.
Hello, David.
Hi, David.
Hello there. It's about pensions, women's pensions in particular, and the women that would had to move their pension retirement date to 66. Now, in the UK, the government of the UK is in maladministration because they didn't give them enough notice. They should have given them 28 months more notice. But on the Isle of Man, you'd only give the women 7 months notice, and you should have wrote to every woman on the island. But a lot of people didn't receive a letter. I don't know any person that's received a letter. Now, my main concern is if both women, one in the UK and one in the Isle of Man, the lady in the Isle of Man is greatly disadvantaged because not only does she lose over £50,000 in the 6 years pension loss, but she loses £16,700 in the Manx supplement. So she's hit twice, and I don't think that's fair.
Well, I think this is in relation, obviously, to what's been called the WASPI campaign in the UK for women born in the 1950s, which have been the ones primarily affected. Obviously, we follow very closely what's happening in the UK. At the time, we had the reciprocal agreement in place in terms of pensions and how it applies. But we do follow very closely, particularly with the current situation, with the legal judgments that are going on there. In terms of the double whammy, I'm not quite sure I view it as a double whammy, because we have a supplement that the UK doesn't have. So it's not a case of they'd be disadvantaged in the UK anyway because they wouldn't be entitled to that in the first place. But it is something we have been looking at closely, and obviously we will continue to look at closely what comes out of the UK, and particularly around those who are challenging that decision.
What's your opinion, David?
Well, I think it's an absolute disgrace to say you're going to watch what happens in the UK. The Manx government massively messed up by giving the women 7 months' notice. Regardless what's happened in the UK, you need, and the government of the day need to sort this mess out. 7 months' notice is not adequate, nor is 28 months in the UK.
Well, I mean, some of the notice I understand was bigger than 7 months in relation to it, but I am aware of the issues, and I can promise you Treasury is monitoring it.
Okay, all right, David, thanks for that. Thanks for calling in with that. Actually, while we're on pensions, excuse me, Westminster voted to overturn a Lord's amendment that would have forced that rethink on the suspension of the triple lock of state pensions. Now, Mr. Cannon was very proud of his stance on protecting pensions on the Isle of Man. So with what's happening across the water, can you reassure pensioners here?
Yeah, so it will form part of the budget process, but at the moment there's been no discussions taken place around changing the triple lock at this point in time.
We're live with David Ashford and lots of questions coming in, so I'll get to these now. What role is Treasury playing in reducing government staff numbers? Mr. Bell reduced the number in government. It went up during Mr. Quayle's administration. You also mentioned a new capital projects unit and Auditor General who will need new staff. Is government getting bigger or smaller?
Well, actually, in relation to the capital projects unit, there'll be existing staff within the departments that could potentially move to actually do some of the staffing within the capital projects unit, because we'll be moving things out of the department and centralising it. In terms of the growth, and I pointed this again out during the election, we have to be very careful when we talk about growth in government, because, for instance, a large proportion of the growth in the last administration was within the Department of Health and Social Care, including frontline workers, so things such as mental health support, things such as care in the community, and also police officers as well was a good proportion of the increase. Now, I don't think anyone would have any objection to those posts. What people are referring to as the back office posts, I think, is the issue. A large proportion of it as well was COVID related. So 111 teams and support for that, and also the contact tracing team. Eventually those numbers will fall away, and we've already seen some reductions in those areas. So I think at the current moment in time, comparing the growth that was seen under the last administration, most of which was actually seen towards the back end of the administration, isn't quite fair at the current moment, comparing it to previous governments. But no, I fully agree that there needs to be a more holistic view of government taken. We need to look at what's being duplicated in departments and could actually be combined up. I've never hidden the fact I'm a supporter of single legal entity of one government. I always have been, and I think we do need to look going forward, even if we don't call it those dreaded words of single legal entity, which have certain connotations. We need to look at a one government approach where we don't have duplication across multiple departments, but things such as finance and so on are centralised.
We're live on YouTube and Facebook, streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. You can also listen back to this as a podcast if you've missed part of it. I'm amazed, it's taken 46 minutes till somebody mentioned the public sector pension liability. Has this been airbrushed out of existence, says John?
No, the public sector pension liability hasn't been airbrushed out of existence. The liability, which I think is probably being referred to as the fact that the liability went up by 1 billion in the last, so the pension liability is 4.8 billion at the moment. But that 1 billion increase in liability was actually mainly due to an actuarial loss. For the year, it was an actuarial loss of 925 million. And in fact, just to show how these things can change, the year before, it was an actuarial gain of 566 million. So the way I always mention with the public sector pension is people sometimes focus on the wrong figure. They focus on the overall cost. So if everyone was paid tomorrow, the cost would be 4.8 billion. But that's not how pensions work. So for instance, Andy, if I said there were two pension schemes, A and B, each had a liability of £1 billion, and I said to you, which pension scheme is in the better position? Well, initially you'd say, well, they're both the same. But if I said pension scheme A has to pay that £1 billion over the next 30 years, but pension scheme B has to pay it over the next 60 years, which one's in the better position? Pension scheme B. So so people get very fascinated by the headline figure, and that's a great headline making figure. But actually, what matters is actually the spread of payment of that liability. So the liability isn't all due at once. It's paid out potentially over the next 50, 60 years. And actually, that's what the changes to public sector pensions over the last administration did. It changed the spread of the liability, which is what the key figure is.
OK, that's John, that's your response from David Ashford, Treasury Minister. Howard's with us now. Howard, you're live with David Ashford.
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon.
Just a curio, the Chief Executive Officer from the DOI, he left with immediate effect. I probably missed it, but I haven't heard of a direct replacement for this particular person. And are they the replacement? Are they going to be under the watchful eye of Treasury? Because in the previous representation for the DOI. They seem to be waving money around like it was going out of fashion. And this, the Treasury, and I think you're a good man to be there because you're a careful spender, but it needs to be very, very carefully looked at. But I haven't heard of any direct replacement. And what is the salary spine? Would it be on a similar wage, which is quite a large salary?
Right, so in terms of DOI, Emily Curfew has stepped in as the interim CEO, so she's an interim CEO. The post will have to go out for advertisement, which obviously, because of the changes happened recently, hasn't happened yet. But Emily has stepped up to be the interim CEO. In terms of spending, Treasury tries to keep a close eye on all departmental spending across all the departments, but it is important that departments equally are accountable for the monies that they've been given to the public purse. And like I say, I mean, one of the issues in DOI has been mainly around capital projects, and that's why I support a capital projects unit being established to actually pull all that together so that there's greater oversight and greater experience there across all of the capital projects of government, across all the departments, not just DOI.
Yeah, it seems to be that the DOI had spread its wings into tentacles, shall we say, is a better word for it, into most departments somewhere along the line. They had, even down to housing, etc. And they seem to have grown to like Topsy's nose, bigger and bigger. Is there any future in the department being as big as it is, or are you going to break it up into what was smaller segments?
Well, the Chief Minister's made very, very clear that he's committed to assessing what DOI does. Expressing my personal opinion, I think, you know, if you go back many, many years, Treasury used to be the place where everything ended up, that no one was quite sure where to allocate. I personally believe that for quite a number of years we went through a process where DOI became that ground. So DOI, for instance, has got the local government unit sat within it. And over time, things have been put onto DOI. I think we do need to review the scope of it and the way DOI is run, potentially, as the Chief Minister has said previously in public, breaking it down into smaller entities and smaller boards that then perhaps report up to a DOI minister and political group which has central oversight across it. But at the moment, DOI is juggling an awful lot of plates, and I think that does need to be reviewed.
OK, Howard, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Minister.
All right, good to talk to you. David Ashford is with us for the remaining 9 minutes. On Monday, the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture's Minister will be live on Manx Radio. Claire Barber joins us Monday at 12 midday.
We all have a Ginger Hall memory. Whether it's watching the TT on Dad's knee, or singing Happy Birthday in the garden, or watching Grandad do the robot at your cousin's wedding. Have your event at the Ginge. We're an approved partner of Conister Bank, and finance options are available, including a 3-month payment holiday up front. With great food and drink in a spectacular setting, you won't be disappointed. Make a Ginger Hall memory. Visit the Ginger Hall events on Facebook. Rates and repayment terms subject to terms and conditions.
The nights are getting darker, and you know what that means. It's nearly Christmas. At Millie Chaps, you'll find all you need to add that sparkle this festive season. Decorate your home with quirky ornaments, fabulous rugs and lamps, and beautiful pictures. Millie Chaps also have a great range of unusual gifts, so don't delay. Call Santa. Is that you?
Shh, there's some great finds here at Millie Chaps.
Yes, there is. Take time to browse Millie Chaps of Ramsey, a town full of special little shops.
I always recommend Spectrum Windows to friends and family when they admire our home. Locally based Spectrum Windows install quality windows, doors and more right across the island, with 10-year guarantees, superb workmanship and excellent service. I'm sending them round to see Dewan as he's doing a new extension. I jokingly said I should be on commission, but there again, Spectrum's fantastic products sell themselves better than any salesman.
Visit Spectrum Windows, the showroom, Derby Road, Ramsey, or call 817777.
Help us make a life-changing difference and enter our monthly hospice lottery draw. You could win one of 3 cash prizes of £1,000, £300 or £150 for just £5 per play. That means we can continue to provide our services to those who need them, when they need them, completely free of charge. Enter online at hospice.org.im/lottery. Players must be 16 or over, and terms and conditions apply.
FC Isle of Man are taking to the field again this weekend, and here at Manx Radio we'll once again be bringing you all the action. The Ravens take on Main Road at the Bowl Stadium tomorrow night as they look to continue their charge of the NWCFL Division 1 South table. Can the Island side make it 6 wins in a row, or will the visitors spring an unpleasant surprise on FC Isle of Man's playoff hopes? Join me, Rob Pritchard and Tony Mepham tomorrow from 6:30pm on Manx Radio Digital, AM 1368, smartphone app and online at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And David Ashford, your Treasury Minister today. Just finally, regarding money that's been spent on the roads, and it's a question in from Graham that just said, we're told 14 million has been spent on the roads. How much is taken every year in road fund licences? And why are they taking the same time doing Kirkmichael pavements as they are on the promenade? Not strictly your.
No, I think that's probably more for DOI. Tim Crookall did lay out in the Keys questions of I don't have that figure in front of me, I must be honest. But if they go to the Hansard, which will be online for the Key for the last sitting of Tynwald last week, Tim Crookall did lay out how much is raised in the road revenue.
OK, Mary's just dropped a note in, just said, look, if they ban coal, what's going to happen to the steam trains? They're a big tourist attraction as well. And a note in just to say, Liz dropped a note in just to say, I've always been impressed with David Ashford's grasp of all the figures. Is all this inside your head?
Well, if anyone can see the studio now, and if you're watching on any streaming, you'll see I do bring copious amounts of paper with me as well. But I've always been pretty good with facts and figures, so I do have a lot up there, but I do bring paper with me as well, just so I've got it in front of me. OK, and again, not strictly you, but it does have a financial impact. When can we expect a TT announcement? So, I mean, that will obviously be the Department for Enterprise and the wider government. I would hope sooner rather than later, to be perfectly honest myself. I mean, how important is TT to Treasury? I mean, TT is important, I think, to the whole island community, to be perfectly honest. I've always come from that point of view. I'll be honest, I've grown up on the island with TT. So I'm one of those who's never really engaged with it as such. I'm not a great TT fan out there, but I think it's very important to the economy of the island. It's very important to our tourist business. And in fact, the fact we haven't had it for the last 2 years has shown the impact on some businesses within our local economy. So it is very important to some vital sectors. And so to the future for Treasury. If you like, there's the short-term future, there are tactics, and then there's the long-term strategy. The Chief Minister talked about a plan for the Isle of Man. Is there a plan for Treasury? Yeah, so Treasury will feed into the Island Plan. Treasury will be a very crucial part of that Island Plan. We need to develop a medium-term financial strategy as part of that. And also we've got to tie in with the priorities of the other government departments. Like I said, there's always been this myth with Treasury that Treasury dictates policy. Treasury should not dictate policy to the departments. Treasury should be responsible for the finance and ensuring that what we do is appropriate. OK, thanks for being with us today, David Ashford. And by the way, obviously pleased to get back in at Douglas North. Yes, thank you to those in Douglas North that put the trust in me again. All right, thanks for being with us today, David Ashford, Treasury Minister. On Monday, Claire Barber from DEFA will be with us. A week on Monday, the Housing Chair, Chris Thomas, also Vice Chair of the Post Office. Laurie Hoop will be along from the DHSC. Alex Allenson will be joining us before Christmas. Julie Edge from Education, Sport and Culture. And Daphne Kane, Chair of the Climate Change Committee, will be in as well. And we got lots more outside broadcasts at the high school. Anyway, thanks for being with us this Friday lunchtime. Thanks to producer Barry Redfern. And thank you to you for your time. Back on Monday at 12 midday. Have a good weekend.